Welcome to Human Powered, the podcast about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. I'm Trenton Moss, and today I have Jon Lonsdale, CEO at B2B marketing agency Publicis Pro. Jon, hello.
Hi, Trenton.
Jon, you co-founded the Octopus Group way back in 2001, and about 20 years later, you were acquired by Publicis, and then in 2024, rebranded to Publicis Pro. You now run a £9 million business with about 65 people here in the UK. So, Jon, your agency mantra, I think, is really interesting. It's all about being extraordinary. Tell me more about that and how you apply that to create a high-performing team.
So we work in an area of B2B marketing, which I think by a lot of industry definitions is seen as perhaps the least creative part of the marcoms industry, which we violently disagree with. And I guess when we changed our name to Publicis Pro, we sort of wanted to issue both a rallying cry to the industry that B2B doesn't need to be boring. In fact, the opposite is true. We think business marketing is extraordinary. And we really wanted to make that central to the brand. But we also wanted it to be, as well as an external sort of call to action for our clients, prospects, industry, whatever, we also wanted it to be an internal one for our people as well. So in terms of how we embed that, we went through this process of being really clear that we wanted our people to be part of that journey. And like any company that had been around for a few years, we had our values, which we put on the wall, and some people could remember them, but some people couldn't. And we just had this idea that if we want to stand for extraordinary work, we should have extraordinary people. And to have extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, they needed to have extraordinary behaviours. They need to exhibit that in their daily jobs. So we set about trying to embed this extraordinary idea throughout the agency top to bottom. And what that really was about was going right down to every single role within the agency and looking at the job spec and going, well, what would be an extraordinary version of this job spec? What would be extraordinary if you did this every day? So we came up with a set of behaviours, as we call them now, rather than values. And then, more importantly, how you could apply those in your jobs at whatever level. So that's the journey that we're on. And it's a really interesting one.
Tell me more about those extraordinary behaviours that you've defined.
We've got 5. They are: be curious, bring your energy, stay tenacious, connect and communicate, and take pride. And as I say, they were almost what we felt an extraordinary B2B marketer should exhibit in their daily jobs. But I think we were just so passionate about embedding them in the way that the agency works. So every new joiner gets taken through them, and not just what they are with a nice little picture on them, but also like some practical steps to how they can exhibit those. So, for example, be curious is we have a very specific thing that we do called Spotted, where we're out on our ways to work. We're trying to find really cool campaigns that we see. So, and they're obviously not always ones that we've been involved with, but we're curious about how they've come about and what's behind them and how successful they were. If it's staying tenacious, we have a thing about don't settle for just good enough, because I think that the real in agency life, I think we can all associate with the fact that sometimes we perhaps take the easy way out. We do the thing that the client wants or that is easy just to get it done and tick it off the to-do list. But I think to be really tenacious, you have to sort of not settle at just doing the ordinary thing. You have to try and push yourself at all times. Take pride is another one where we think a really good behaviour for taking pride is actually shouting out to others in your team when you're proud of something or you're proud of them. So it's a very sort of open culture about, which we literally call shout outs, which we'll put hashtag shout out on our internal channel, or we'll stand up in the office and just go, we need to do a shout out. And that could be a piece of work. It could be something good that happened today. It could be something that your team did. But that's about the pride thing. And that's, again, not always natural to some people, but we try and make that implicit in the agency. So all of those 5 things have like very specific things that we do that are aligned to the agency, which makes them happen, which is the key thing.
That's brilliant. And I love how you make that a thing from the moment someone joins the business. You're explaining this and you're giving examples of how they might want to do it.
Yeah, because I think agency life tends to attract very similar types of people, usually extroverts, you're relatively creative, you hopefully are good communicators. So I think you sort of self-select those people to be part of your agency. But of course, not everyone exhibits the the same traits all the time. And I think if you're trying to create momentum, a sense of belonging, a sense of how we do things, then a little bit of standardization of those things or interpretation of those is really important for an agency. It sort of becomes your way of doing it, your tribe, the way your tribe does it. And I think that's really important in agencies, because we're just a group of people who are challenging the norm, and we're all working hard together and all that stuff. And I think it's really important that you create those things. And we call them habits, which I think is a nice word. So we try and have habits in the agency, which if I think about, I've endured for quite a long time. You know, they've morphed and they've tweaked and they've changed over the years, but a lot of those habits are still the same. We still do a lot of the same things in the agency, which is important. So habits is a big part of how you embed culture, I think.
Tell me more about some of those habits that are happening.
Yeah. So like, there's things that, if my team were like listening to, they'll be smiling, because there's things that we've always done. We've been an agency that's been around for quite a while, sort of 25 years, which not a lot of agency founders have the luxury to say. So a lot of our things have endured. So one of our habits is an annual festival that we do every summer, which is called Rock to Stock, which is our little summer festival that we did before it was a cool thing to do. Which started off when we didn't have any money to spend, so we just camped in a field when there were 10 of us in the agency, and it's endured. We've done it for 16 years now, so it's every summer. That's one extreme. Like, another thing is the Monday morning meeting. We've done a Monday morning meeting every Monday for 25 years. We always have a 9:30 meeting on a Monday where we chat about stuff, and it's a habit. It's a habit that we have. One of our team a couple of years ago just came up with this idea, like, randomly in a meeting, that said, I'd like to do some shout outs if that's all right. And everyone went, okay. And she said, I'd just like to make some shout outs from my team. And in every meeting now that we have shout outs. So, you know, that means people come to every team meeting, agency meeting, with a thank you. And back to my take pride behaviour, that's a key way of doing it. So we've got habits that have endured for years, because perhaps myself or some of the other founders sort of came up with the idea and it stuck. But there's also the ability to give staff, let them create new habits or new things. The Spotted idea was our creative director. One of our key business objectives is to improve the quality of our creative output, back to the extraordinary positioning. And he said, well, we need to get our people spotting things and bringing them back to the agency and applying that into their work. So let's create a competition called Spotted that we have every month. And we all pick a campaign, we put it in a PowerPoint online, we all review them every month, we vote on the best ones. People have to come and present that work as if they'd come up with it. So it's just a really great, like, informal, fun thing to do that gets people talking about work and why they're really here and the quality of that creative. So yeah, habits. I'm a big believer in habits, both ones that you keep forever and new ones that you can bring in.
And it sounds like those habits, for example, like Spotted, are really contributing to your mantra of find your extraordinary.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can't expect massive change when you're bringing in a new brand, a new positioning and behaviours. But I think as a leader, you can sense it over time when you get people quoting back to you, and even like the word, because extraordinary is not a word you use in everyday language, right? Like, it's not something that we don't go, that was an extraordinary meal, or, you know, today's been an extraordinary day. But when you start to hear people talking about the word extraordinary and like, what would make this really extraordinary? What would make it brilliant? Then you sort of know that it's not for pretense. It's actually just part of the thing, part of the culture. So that's really nice to hear that. Nice to hear people referencing, particularly newer people who perhaps have joined the agency in the last year or since we rebranded, where, you know, those who were on that journey from Octopus Group to Publicis Pro have seen both sides of it. So, but people who just join, they take you for where you are, and that's how this agency does things, and I like it, and I'm going to join in. And so that's the nice thing as a leader, to see those things actually leading into business performance and the quality of the work. And I think as a leadership team, we can map back then the good things that happen in the agency to those things. The people who are around that take a lot of pride in that, because it's not an easy thing to do, I think, in agency land, and it's a brave thing to do, to sort of have the drains up on everything that you do and sort of redefine it. But I'm a big believer in, you know, every few years you do need to do that in an agency and redefine that. And you have these sort of eras, I think, in agencies where you can look back on and go, that era we did this era we're going to do that. And then maybe the future era we perhaps need a different vitamin shot in the agency to redefine those things.
And the current era is about finding your extraordinary, because operating in B2B marketing, perhaps people often don't try to find your extraordinary.
Yeah, I think so. It's talked about a lot in our industry for people who are really, really into it and you've been done it for a while like us. But I think we got acquired by Publicis Group in 2021, which is, you know, by any measure now probably the world's biggest ad agency holding group. And of course, there's just amazing creative talent in that group. There's like 100,000 people globally that are all doing amazing creative stuff. So I think as an acquired independent agency going into it, we run 20 years as an indie, and we knew that, wow, we've got to up our game here. we're now peers with household name agencies like Saatchi's, Leo Burnett's, who are doing the Christmas TV ads and whatever else. I just think it was like, we can do that. Yes, in our part of the market. So we were really emboldened to really, really push creativity. And the extraordinary thing came from that. And it's been a really good exercise in embedding an internal set of behaviours into an external brand, which I think sometimes you don't often get. I think a value prop for an agency should be the same for the people in it and the people who buy from it. So that's been a really good exercise.
It's a really interesting comment there about making sure your value proposition is the same for your team and for the market. Tell me a bit more about some of the other eras you've had in the agency. And for those different eras, what have you needed to do to lead the team and make sure that you remain a high-performing business?
If I think back, there's probably been 3 eras for our business. There was the startup, the agency that was just starting out, had 3 people when it started and grew quickly and all that, and that exciting sort of phase of growth that you don't know what you're doing, you're pushing on. So think of that as the kid, the startup bit. Then there's the teenage years. You're now established, you've got a finance person in the business, you need scale, you've got to pay people more. You can't all jump on a plane and go skiing anymore. So that's the teenage years. And then I like to think the last 5, since we joined the group, are what I would call the adult years, the grown-up years, where we're now part of a much bigger group and probably have a different lens on the world, a bit more experience. We know what we are, that stuff that comes with maturity. And I think the kid phase, you just have this bundle of energy that will get you a lot of places. And I think it's a really exciting sort of hyper growth phase where you can double the size of your agency in a year, and it's like so exciting and all that stuff. So I think that's more about setting out the store for the agency you want to be. I vividly remember saying to our founders, we'd all worked in agencies before. We want to take all the best bits of working in those agencies and put them into one thing. And I worked at some great places. So we had this mantra that was, if we can create the best job ever for the people who come and work for us, that would be like an amazing thing, wouldn't it? It was like genuinely one of our reasons for setting up an agency. So best job ever has sort of stuck with us. So I like to think we've kept best job ever through those phases. But that was really what you look for, I think. Then the teenage years where you really have to define that stuff. So that's when I remember, literally what are our values, and having those workshops where we go, right, what does Octopus Group need to be for the next phase of growth? Because we've been around for a few years, then we sort of define what those values were. And they were a little bit more about the people we hired. We had a think about sort of be yourself. We only want to hire people who can be themselves at work. We wanted to create an environment for that. Say thank you was another one which has stuck with us. And we had one that was like, excuse my language, was don't be a dick. It was like, we just don't want people to be idiotic or do things that are bad or badly behaved. So that was those years. And people always remember that one because it was the one that stands out on the wall, and clients used to laugh at it and stuff. But it was really about, you're inviting someone into your house, your dinner party, and you want them to be like you. And that sort of got us through those middle years. Again, coming into the final stage, which we're in now, it was sort of like defining the people we wanted to hire, and we just got really good at doing that. So we didn't need to say, we want to hire nice, open, interesting people who are nice to work with. And then the final stage was this bit I've just mentioned, where we're getting into, right, our work's getting more global, it's getting more high profile. We're part of a big holding group now that has certain standards and wins lots of awards. So that was really like, right, let's look at the work and let's embed the work, what we want to create in our proposition. Find your extraordinary, and then let's make sure our people have embedded that in their thinking when they join the agency. And now we're in the phase where we're growing internationally and we're hiring people who we're not with all the time. So those things are going to be even more important as we go forward to help the growth of the agency.
What an amazing journey you've been on the past 25 years. Let's go back to some of those early days. And you said that you wanted to take the best bit from your previous experiences at other agencies to create the best job ever. Tell me more about your thinking back then. What did you all believe to be the best job ever?
Someone said to me once that you don't need to explain culture, you can actually smell it. And I've always remembered that. And it came from, in the early days, clients used to come in and work with us. And it was all about, come work with us. We're a challenger brand. You've got agencies, but we want to take over their work. Why are we different? And we used to build it on culture, energy, where we're going to put a lot of energy into your business. So we had this thing about always come and see us. Like, we want prospects to come to us, even though we had this crappy little office and we're a bit embarrassed about it. We're like, just come to us. And you'll be able to smell the culture of how we work. You'll be able to get the energy and get the enthusiasm. So, and I think smelling the culture is something that, again, we talk about at times. And I think it's why we've always performed really well in all those awards that we think are really important, which are the Best Place to Work awards, because people's why we do this job. That's really what it's about. So, smelling the culture. So that was a really big part of, like, okay, so if I can smell a culture when I walk in, what will that culture need to be? Well, it'd need to be friendly, open. It would need to be non-judgmental. You would let people be their best selves at work. Just be yourself. We don't want anyone who is someone at home coming to work and being somebody different. And then, of course, you got practical things like, how do we attract all these amazing people from other agencies to come and join this little startup? So we got to think about benefits. We got to think about, you can't compete on salary or bonuses or whatever. So you try and find unique things. So we had this summer festival. Right from the start, we had like a sabbatical, like a 3-month sabbatical program where if you committed to us for a long period of time, I think it was 5 years, you got 3 months off. And for an agency that had 5 people in it to put that on a list, it was quite a big call. We tried to be innovative in the benefits we provided because we were trying to catch people's attention. As I've gone on, I've realised that the best job ever is more about the environment you create and the people you are than it is about, oh yeah, they did this great benefits package. And people will forget those things, but they'll always remember the way they were treated.
Let's talk a little bit about the current era, the grown-up years. And you mentioned that you're now growing internationally and hiring people that you're not with all of the time. How do you do that while still maintaining the mantras of keeping this the best job ever and making sure everyone finds their extraordinary?
Yeah, it's something that I think when we went into discussions about joining Publicis Group, we were very conscious of it. And we said that what we would try and do is we'll take all the best bits from the agencies. What we've done the other way around is we've kept all those DNA things, I think, that were really important as an indie, but we've borrowed a load of things from Publicis Group now that we wouldn't have been able to do ourselves. I like to think 1 + 1 = 3, and that's the way we've seen it. All of our people have stuck around. They all see being part of Publicis Group now as a career development opportunity. For example, the learning and development opportunities you get within Publicis Group are just off the charts, amazing. We have an internal intranet called Marcel, where you can match up with other people around the world and be mentored by amazing people. The trainings are first class. So even as a 60 strong agency, you wouldn't be able to provide that level. You can do some things, but you can't do others. But they also do this thing called Work Your World, which allows our staff to live for 6 weeks in another country where Publicis has an office. It was over 100 countries. So we've had people go all over the world in the last few years, go and work in Mexico for 6 weeks. There's even Airbnb style match properties where you can crash out in someone's flat if they're doing the same. So, I mean, stuff like that, just with global scale, you wouldn't have been able to do that as Octopus Group, just because we wouldn't have had the resources or the time. I think when it comes to the sort of extraordinary values within the group, like I think the people, if they look at their daily jobs and the work that they do, I think they're still working with the same people. They've still got the same behaviours and they're allowed to be themselves, but they just get to work on bigger, better stuff that is a bit more, that they're learning more on. And I like to think we can keep those values tight and still be known as a great place to work, which is a really important thing for me and the other founders. The one awards that we always look at is like, well, we're doing stuff right.
Oh, yes, because I think you've won the top 5 campaign best places to work for 5 years in a row now.
Yeah, really proud of that. So we always put in for the best place to work awards. I like that one because it's voted for by staff. It's all done by staff feedback, which is great. And it makes our people proud that we work within a massive holding group and we're one of the handful of agencies out there of the hundreds that they have in the group who gets called out.
And across the 3 eras that you've had of running the agency, one thing that's been consistent over the last 25 years is that you and your co-founders have been there. What do you see as the benefits of having that consistency and longevity in the leadership?
I don't think longevity and consistency is talked about enough in agency land. I've done thousands of agencies in the UK all doing amazing stuff, and it's a really interesting ecosystem that we're all part of. But I think it does index towards fast growth, short-termism sometimes. Like everyone tells you, like, wow, this agency grew X in 3 years. And that was my ambition when I started. I didn't have a time frame beyond 3 or 4 years. But I think looking back, having the same leadership, the consistency, the same people that were there on day one that are there and 25 years later gives you a load of stuff. And I think when we were talking about culture a lot today, that's really probably the biggest thing. It's just the consistency and the fact that there were 3 of us. But if one of us wasn't there, one of us was away on holiday, having kids or building a house or whatever we all did, there was always people there to keep the same standards, always people there to keep the same consistency. And we all had different roles. We're not all co-MDs. We all have very different roles in the agency. But that knowing that someone's got your back and someone's going to be there, and someone's going to be in the room, just making sure it's all right, and taking that as I said before, that little sniff test on the culture to make sure that nothing's getting out of hand and stuff like that. I'm a big fanboy of the Patagonia story and how they've built this really sustainable, amazing business. Yves Jonard, the CEO, has got this amazing book that is all about how he started the business. It's called Let My People Go Surfing, which really appeals to me. The whole point is that if you could run a business based on a 100-year view, you would do very different things. Now, I'm not going to be in 100 years, but I think having a long-term view of decisions is just like a really nice idea, that you aren't just doing things, and we make decisions all the time, like this afternoon we've got to decide if we're going to do this or hire that person, but if you could just for a minute just take at every decision you made and think, is it the right thing to do for the long term? I think it's just a really nice lens on this crazy fast world of agency life that we're in. And the consistency bit is about the repeatability of it and just turning up every day and having the same standards. And people, it's definitely allowed us to keep standards high. And as years have gone on, you start to hire people who become those next level leaders. So we call them the generals, but the generals in your agency who adopt the same mantra, who've perhaps been with you for a bit longer, they become then the leaders who grew up with your values or grew up with how you did things, and that's become theirs. So now we're at the stage with a brilliant leadership team where 3 of us weren't there for 6 months. Then I like to think that the same standards would apply, the same way of doing things, the same humility of doing things in the right way. But then I think reflecting back, people go, oh God, you've been doing this for 25 years. What went wrong rather than what went right? And I just say, well, it's been a journey. I had a lot of mistakes, but I think what a way to look back on your career and go, yeah, we did all that. And it's quite a rare thing. So I feel very lucky to have been able to do that.
Yeah, sounds like an amazing journey. Thank you so much for joining today and sharing all of that. Let's just spend a little bit of time looking to the future. Jon, tell me a bit about what's next for you and what's next for the business.
Our services are completely changing. We're adopting a lot more services from around the Publicis Group. So now we share a name and we have this centre of excellence model. We can really innovate quite a lot in the services that we bring in. So we've got lots of exciting projects going on. Some of the stuff that the group's doing with AI that we're part of is really exciting. So lots of really cool stuff. I'm learning loads, which is really important to me. And I think the other one is a legacy thing. It's been a long journey, this, for a lot of us in our careers. And we want to make sure that this thing carries on growing and it's set up for the future, that the leaders within it are teed up to take it forward. If there is a time, it's at some point in the future when we're not around, that it exists and it's a thriving, growing business. So loads of things, but at the moment focused on keep winning these global clients, expanding our footprint internationally, which is really exciting for us. Something that we never did as an indie, and keep pushing that creativity. We always said we're on a mission to try and put B2B on the map, put creativity on the map in B2B. We're chipping away at that. We put some great work out and hope we can win a few gongs for that work as well, which I think will be a real underlying point on the Find Your Extraordinary thing, because we've set ourselves quite a high bar. Everything we do has got to be extraordinary. It's a process of pushing yourself a bit more, getting clients that want to do that stuff as well. As long as I can see improvement every year in the work and the people we hire and have that same ambition, then I'm happy.
That's lovely. And it's so lovely to hear your enthusiasm, even after 25 years. Jon, thank you so much for taking the time out to join me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Pleasure, Trenton. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Human Powered, the podcast all about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. Thanks for tuning in.